Guys, the UFC has still not announced a Ilia Topuria fight at lightweight. It's been months now since he's vacated the featherweight strap and moved up a weight class. Still no news. I really wish I didn't have to make this video. I wish the UFC could just do the right thing and make Islam Makhachev fight Ilia Topuria. There's no one as deserving for the lightweight shot than Ilia Topuria, and especially during a time now, it's very frustrating because we've seen so many undeserving title shots recently. We know Sean O'Malley got made a bottom. Merab made him a bottom in their fight, and then Sean sits out for an entire title defense, watches Umar versus Merab, and then gets back in and gets the next title shot. Very unfair. Sean Strickland successfully cried his way to a title shot. He cried and cried when Drakus brought up his dad, and then he continued to cry after the result of the first fight, crying that it was a robbery. Got the rematch, and then got his ass whooped even worse in the rematch. Colby Covington obviously got that very undeserving title shot against Leon Edwards after sitting out for almost an entire year, after fighting Jorge Masvidal. Not a very good quality win, only beat him by decision. And a justification and excuse I hear a lot from Makhachev's team, from Islam Makhachev fans, is that he hasn't done enough, that Ilia Topuria has not done enough in UFC, or specifically in the lightweight division, to go up a weight class. Now, we could talk about that. A featherweight champion gave Islam his most competitive title shot. The rematch was obviously on short notice, so there's a big asterisk with that one. But the first fight, you give a featherweight enough time, you give the featherweight champion enough time, he's a problem for Islam Makhachev. Featherweight is a very, very good division. You have to be one of the best to be a champion at featherweight. Volkanovski, some debate that he beat Islam in the first fight. I don't think so. I think Islam actually edged it out. But, pause. I do think that Volkanovski was clearly, out of all his title defenses, Volkanovski came the closest to beating Islam, especially in the end of that fifth round. And because of what Ilia did to Volkanovski and Max Holloway, I do think that's a huge threat for Islam. That's a really scary fight for Islam. Now, I would like for Islam to prove me wrong and just take the fight, but the more ducking there is, and the more he's more eager to go to welterweight, which we're going to talk about how this is hurting the UFC. Islam Makhachev wanting to go to welterweight, stalling the entire lightweight division, the most stacked division in the UFC, at least one of the most, to go up to welterweight. I understand that not fighting Arman Tsarukyan wasn't up to Islam. That was out of his powers. Arman dropped out. But nonetheless, you didn't fight the number one contender. You fought Renato Moicano. And how does beating Renato Moicano garner you to go up a weight class? Listen, I understand that Makhachev does have a very impressive resume. I don't deny that. I agree that he's probably the greatest lightweight champion ever, but Ilia Topuria is proving he's the greatest featherweight champion ever. He knocked out Volkanovski and Max Holloway in the same calendar year. I feel like a broken record every time I say that, but it feels like it hasn't been said enough just how impressive that is. He should have been 2024 Fighter of the Year. Now, what's really annoying and infuriating about Islam moving up is that he's admitted that he's waiting for the result of the welterweight fight between Belal and JDM to see if he should move. Now, personally, I think Makhachev is one of those dudes who, even if Belal wins, knowing him and his competitive nature, he would go up and choke out Belal. But because of PR and because they have the same manager, they probably don't want to. They probably might avoid that because Ali doesn't want that fight. But we're going to talk about some of the matchups that Ilia Topuria should take in the lightweight division, because at this point you can't expect the UFC to do the right thing, as we talked about with Sean Strickland, Sean O'Malley, and Colby Covington. You can't expect the UFC to do the right thing. You're going to have to take on a contender because Islam is ducking. And I think by doing that, you would also garner more fans because it would show that you're not scared of the top five, the top 10 or, top five specifically. But now there's many matchups I think would be good. Patty would be a fun matchup for obvious reasons. But Paddy's ranked a little bit low and only just beat Michael Chandler. So I think an opponent like Justin Gaethje or Charles Oliveira would be an easy win for Ilia Topuria. You know, Charles Oliveira is the guy who always gets hurt in every fight, and Ilia Topuria has a killer instinct, unlike Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, who also have a killer instinct, but they're not Ilia Topuria. Once Ilia Topuria gets you hurt against the fence, it's not going to be like Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, where they allow Charles to get back in the fight. Ilia Topuria is going to finish Charles Oliveira if they fight. And against Justin Gaethje, I don't have a doubt in the world that Ilia Topuria would finish Justin Gaethje. His technical striking and footwork and his defensive head movement is superior towards Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is not very good at moving his head defensively. That's always been a big glaring flaw in his stand-up. Ilia Topuria would outclass him in that. Now, the perfect fight for Ilia Topuria is Arman Tsarukyan, and I understand that I guess they don't want to fight each other because they're both connected through Georgia, the country of Georgia. I think it's like, Ilia, if you're moving up a weight class, Arman is one of the youngest contenders and the number one contender. You're going to have to fight him if you're moving up to lightweight, Ilia. I don't know what else to say about that. You can't really play this game that Islam Makhachev and Bilal are playing just because they're friends or have this connection. They don't want to fight. You have to fight. And I think that beating Arman Tsarukyan would be, not just because he's the number one contender, but also because his resume is so good. And because, okay, so here's his resume. I was also going to say Charles Oliveira would be a great fight because Charles Oliveira has, just like Max Holloway and Volkanovski, he has a big fan base. So beating Charles Oliveira, it would make you some enemies, just like beating Holloway and Volkanovski pissed off some people. But it would also make people appreciate it. And that's something that happened after Max Holloway. People didn't want to see Max Holloway get knocked out. But Ilia Topuria gained so much respect because he was the first guy to TKO him and stuff. Nobody denied his ability and his skill after that. Really couldn't deny him. So I do think that the perfect fight would be Arman Tsarukyan. So this is Arman Tsarukyan's resume. Very impressive, very impressive. The only two losses are unanimous decision losses. One of them to Islam Makhachev, the current champion, when Arman was making his debut. So really impressive loss to have on your resume. And then the Gamrot fight, he lost that one too. Pretty close fight. But aside from that, he has some very impressive wins. Matt Steamroller Favola. But Yoel Alvarez is such a great win on Arman Tsarukyan's resume. Yoel Alvarez has been on a 3-fight win streak since his loss to Arman, and I believe all 3 of his fights have been finishes. Yoel Alvarez is a really great win to have on your resume. And obviously, beating Beneil Dariush, Joaquin Silva, and specifically Charles Oliveira, very, very, very impressive. So, yeah, I think Ilia Topuria, it sucks that I have to make this video. It sucks that I even have to have this take because I think Ilia Topuria should get the immediate title shot. But because the UFC is so fucking stupid and they're just incapable of doing the right thing, they're incapable of giving the right people the right title shots right now, I think he has to make himself undeniable. You have to make yourselves... Knocking out Arman Tsarukyan with a resume like this would make you undeniable for the next title shot, in my opinion. I want to thank all you guys for liking, subscribing. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'm going to be trying making MMA content every single day. Thank you.